Okay, so last week I talked about the bright side of mythology, and today I want to talk about the dark side, but not of mythology, of mythos. And I did already talk about mythos in the past when referring to Ilyenkov and some of his students, but today I just wanted to talk once again about how we currently, in our modern societies, we don't necessarily understand that a lot of the stories that are shared, a lot of the narratives that are very common are a part of the modern mythos. And whether they will be seen as mythology later on, only time could tell. But the necessity for the invention of different types of narratives, just as I explained last week, the necessity is there to give hope. However, the modern mythos surrounds the themes of despair. We hear so much the stories of the people being awful, right? And I'm not talking about the actual news stories. Of course, news stories can also be biased and can also tell and spread lies. But I'm talking about more specifically the type of narratives that we tell each other and that we teach our children that kind of correspond with our value systems and our beliefs about ourselves and people in general. So the mythos that I'm referring to is more akin to the myths of meritocracy, myths of the just world, the bootstrap type of a myth, pull yourself by the bootstraps type of a narrative. All of these narratives are a part of the capitalist ideology and the capitalist mythos. I believe in this case, ideology and mythos can be interchangeable because ideology is our perceived imaginary explanations to why the world is the way it is. It is unfortunately not based on reality. Ideology does not reflect real world, and what we strive for when we dedicate ourselves to the study of communism and dialectical materialism, we dedicate ourselves to the study of the truth, which would be the opposite of mythos, right? It would be logos, which would be the true word, and it is very, very hard to do in the modern world because every single source is biased in one way or another, and we should not strive towards this neutrality and objectivity, which I personally think is not going to be possible, at least not in the next few generations or so. Even if we start building socialism and communism, I don't think that is going to happen. I don't think we're going to have purely scientific approaches to perceiving life and phenomena. I believe that we humans will always be bound by some kind of an ideology. This is my personal belief. As I shared before, not everybody shares this in communist circles. However, what I do want to point out that the modern mythos, not only is it harmful because it does not reflect the truth, it is also, instead of giving us hope, as many myths of the past did, it gives us a sense of despair and a sense of doom and gloom. So all of these stories about how greedy the people are, how awful the people are to each other, how people always pursue only their own personal agenda and they're so selfish, and they lack altruism in any way or form. All of these stories, what they do is they create this sensation of complete despair when we feel like, well, it doesn't really matter how much we personally try to change something and be better people. Look at all these other people who I cannot trust. And the lack of trust is also a huge part of the modern mythos, not because it's not true necessarily. Yes, of course, people are lacking in trust for a reason. There are good, legitimate reasons not to trust random people on the internet like me. You should not just trust me, right? Or in your own personal life, of course, there may be people who you should be careful about. However, it is the story about how every single person is not trustworthy because they're selfish, they're going to pursue their own goals, etc., etc. And this is where we should remember the dysfunctions that capitalism causes us, all of the maladaptive defense mechanisms that I keep on talking about, even though everybody gets annoyed. Even in real life, people get annoyed with me because I always bring it up, because it is something that happens to us unconsciously. Whether we believe it happens to us or we don't, it doesn't really matter. It just does, to the vast majority of us, we actually perceive the world through this lens, not only of capitalist propaganda, but also of our own personal trauma. And we're not bad people and weak people, and it doesn't make us inherently not trustworthy, but what it does, it makes us very vulnerable. So we may perceive neutral events as negative, we may perceive events that may not necessarily involve us as something that has to involve us, etc., etc. So all kinds of antisocial and narcissistic patterns of behavior may arise in every single one of us. So we have to keep ourselves in check, and not by trying to investigate our own thought crimes, no, but actually going through the motions of emotional processing, something that I continuously advocate for, because I myself did not know how to regulate my own emotions for a long time, and it caused a lot of harm to myself, and it caused harm to some people around me who were the closest to me. Unfortunately, I was very much aware, acutely aware of the fact that if I were behaving a certain way towards strangers, that would be more dangerous, so I kept it to myself and some of the select few loved ones, and it made us all suffer, because I would be very much not trusting, I would be very much afraid all the time of people doing something against me. And I wasn't necessarily paranoid personally. However, once I noticed these tendencies, I saw that it was a slippery slope. And I am not unique in my experience. I did not have a unique bad type of trauma. I believe that the vast majority of modern people have their vision clouded by capitalist indoctrination, by capitalist ideology, and by personal traumas that may differ from person to person, but they all end up causing the same patterns of behavior, or at least very similar patterns of behavior. Lack of trust, lack of a belief in a fellow human being. And we should not counteract these by just telling ourselves that, oh, these people are trustworthy. No, because some people may actually, whether they want to or not, cause us harm. It may be accidental, it may even be intentional, but not because necessarily they're against you. It may actually be business, nothing personal, right? People may be seeking to take an advantage of others who they perceive to be weaker, but this is also the type of antisocial maladaptation that is mostly caused by capitalism. So we may just happen to be in the way of such a person that they will want to take advantage of us, and they may harm us either accidentally or intentionally. And instead of thinking that, oh, all the people are like this, what we should learn is we should learn the patterns, and we should learn how to deal with these patterns, how to make ourselves safe by engaging in honest conversations, by building clear boundaries, even though there is a lot to talk about concerning boundaries. And we need to learn how to build healthy collectives, which is a very, very big task. And I think that should be a part of everybody's organizing routine, when people learn how to build trustworthy connections with each other. And we do not, unfortunately, dedicate enough time to this. We do need to emotionally process together more often than not. But of course, it is necessary to do it on your own at first, because again, it may be very scary. You may feel very vulnerable. So learning to process your emotions and learning to divide, this is my emotions, this is the state of being that's going to pass on its own. It doesn't have to control me. I don't have to make any decisions. And conclusions that may be more cognitive, but not necessarily cognitive only, the conclusions that may actually lead to the change in behavior. So we should pay attention to the balance of the two, because again, when we overcome our sensation and it turns into a full-on emotion and then a feeling, when this feeling passes, it is going to leave us with some kind of thought or some kind of a conclusion that we later should examine again. We should not just blindly trust our first sense then we should not trust to emote that sense onto others. And then we should make sure that our feeling is communicating to our cognitive parts of the brain, right? So usually what that would imply is we've got to, if we experience some kind of an emotional situation, when we feel triggered, we should take the time to sit down and process and tell ourselves, what am I feeling? Or why does it feel this way? What does this remind me of? Etc., etc. So all of these boring questions that therapists ask, we can ask ourselves these questions, and it is a very helpful technique indeed. And if you haven't practiced that, it may actually take some time. Some emotions and feelings may need a few days or even a few weeks to fully process, and it's not linear. It's not going to be like, oh, you only feel this emotion for days on end. No, of course not. You're going to get distracted. You're going to feel something else, etc., etc. So it is fine, especially if it's not an emergency. Then it is okay if something takes you days or even weeks to process. And you can tell people honestly that you need time to fully process your emotions, and that you're not going to be able to communicate your thoughts very clearly. But the more you practice this, the less time it is going to take you to process a lot of these states of being. And then once you get some experience, you're going to be able to start processing with other people, and you will be able to help not only guide yourself, but sometimes maybe even guide other people. And you've got to be very patient with a lot of these processes. Collective processing is necessary to build communities, and it is very challenging to do such things because there has to be a high level of trust. So again, we're working against that mythos, against all of these narratives about how selfish and inherently bad every single individual is. But we've got to attempt to do that anyway. We have to try, and we've got to look for different ways to see how to do it to the best of our ability. We've got to use all the resources that are available to us on the internet. There's still plenty of people who do describe a lot of these therapeutic processes and how they can be applied to one's daily life. And I do encourage everyone to do that, because we cannot be trusting all these myths, modern myths about how we're so bad for each other, we are so untrustworthy, and look at what we do. Maybe we deserve capitalism, maybe we deserve to suffer, and we will never be successful. And all of these doomerist narratives are going to continue to be perpetuated, so we have to counteract them with the stories of hope, because there's so many people who will enter your life who are actually going to be trustworthy and good and altruistic for all the right reasons, for the reasons because they understand that they depend on others just like others depend on them. And by working together, we can actually achieve great feats of wisdom and beauty and truth, etc., etc. So it is not naive to look for the best in people and to try and cherish your own best qualities. It is not naive to try and connect with other people. Please don't give up on yourself or other people. We should continue learning from the vast body of civilization that we have inherited. All of these thousands of years of wisdom should not go to waste. So we should really look into the modern mythos and understand that most of these stories exist to prop up the existing status quo, which is exploitative. It is never going to have people's well-being in mind or the planet's well-being in mind. So we should remember that, and we should learn to live with these narratives, and instead of just saying no to the narratives, we should counteract them with our own stories, with our own narratives about how we can actually change, because the main law of the universe is change. It is not that something is essentially and inherently in a certain way and it's never going to change ever. No, we should continue investing in change and in improvement of ourselves and our communities. So let me know what you think. I hope you have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the social medias, even though I don't do much there. And I'll talk to you sometime later.